Assalamu alaikum, Siwash.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
A pleasure to be able to have this conversation with you today, inshallah. I really want to focus on your journey from when you started to where you are now. But before we get stuck in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Yeah. Um, my name is Siwash. Married, husband, two kids, alhamdulillah, live in Malaysia. It's always been a dream to do Hijrah. So, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed me to move to Malaysia. Been running a business for, I think, 13, 14 years and running a coaching business for around 9.5 years.
And what were you doing before you became a successful life coach and business coach?
I was doing a lot. Basically, I started a coaching business in 2016, and in those kind of like, let's say, I think it's 6 years, 6 years before that, I went through like 15 jobs. I think probably there's something important to share just before that because there's a reason why I went to 15 jobs because at the age of 18, I somehow got into poker. I became a professional poker player and I started making a lot of money, probably too much money for an 18-year-old, right? And alhamdulillah, I was traveling around the world, five-star hotels, really living life. And then, alhamdulillah, in 2010, Allah guided me to Islam, right? And completely changed my life. I fell in love with Islam and I realized that the thing that I was doing, the thing that I was at that time really passionate about, poker, right, was a haram way of earning money. So I kind of had that realization like, okay, you know what, if I'm serious about this journey, if I'm really, serious and sincere about this relationship with Allah, I need to do things differently. So I gave up poker and it was incredibly hard, but at the same time, very fulfilling because that inner peace that you get from your relationship with Allah, I don't think anything else can give that. So I went on this journey trying to find out what can I do, right? I didn't have a degree. I dropped out of high school. So I ended up working in a supermarket in Tesco. It's a really big chain in the UK. And yeah, I was kind of searching like, hey, what can I do? I needed to pay the bills. And I kept going from job to job. And I think one of the reasons I was hopping from job to job is because in most jobs I just get bored and kind of hit the ceiling. Some jobs they had, you know, there was a route to get promoted, but it didn't seem really like the thing I wanted, right? So yeah, I tried lots of different things, but really, the main focus was just like let's pay the bills and let's keep looking for the thing that's kind of gonna tick those different boxes in terms of creating financial freedom, doing something obviously that's halal, and at the same time something that's challenging, something that I can be passionate about.
Alhamdulillah. And so, when did you first encounter coaching as a craft and something that you could potentially do yourself?
Yeah, good question. I always kind of say that I'm an accidental coach.
Mm.
And what I mean with that is, there wasn't, you know, I didn't have this thing around like, okay, I can, what do you call that? Like some people at some point they come across coaching and they're like, hey, I want to learn this thing and then I want to have this as a career, right? So for me, I think it started in my poker time. I basically start, reading personal development books because mindset is so important. Right? Knowing how to manage your emotions is really important in poker. And there's so many similarities with running a business and being a coach. So yeah, it came from reading books initially. And then in 2016, like early to 2016, I attended the Tony Robbins event, right? It's a UPW, his signature program. I'm in London with 8,000 people, and it's a transformational 4-day event. It's really, really impactful. And I think that's probably the first time I had an experience of an actual proper coaching event. right? So I've read a lot of books, personal development books, and a lot of them were written actually by coaches. But
Mm.
that until that point, I didn't really had an idea of like what is coaching. And then in end of 2016, so fast forward 6 months, I actually hired a coach, right? I went
Mm.
through like a 21-day program. It's really impactful and decided to hire the coach 101. And it's really funny because I remember that moment, I think it's like 2 sessions in, and then just noticed like there's something unlocked in me, right? You
Mm.
have this moment of like, wow, this is so powerful. And I remember asking him like, hey, is this something you do full time? He's like, yeah, I do this full time. And I'm like, how many clients do you have? He's like, 10. I'm like, what? 10 times 3,000? You're making 30,000 from this thing? So that was the moment where I was like, wow, you know what? This is something that could be really, really fun. Like helping people, you're making a difference, and you're basically just spending time with people, like helping them improve, helping them unlock their next level, and you're earning really good money. So that's the kind of the first time I saw the possibility of being a coach as a full-time job, as a full-time career.
Love that. And so when you went into coaching and you decided to establish this career, what were the first few years like?
Um, Probably the best way to describe my first 2 years is as like a crazy roller coaster with a lot of, like, I don't know if you've experienced those really fast ones. You kind of get in with excitement and then it's like you feel like
Right.
you're gonna die. So there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of like, I have no idea how I'm gonna survive this. Um, yeah, just and alhamdulillah, like looking back at it, obviously I can see how Allah guided me through this different path because from feeling lost all the time, I've in the different parts of my journey, especially in the first 2 years, I would meet people that kind of would guide me,
Mm.
right? So I'm almost someone that's kind of lost on the journey going up a mountain, and every time there's a different guide. So
Mm.
alhamdulillah, I met people, that were running successful businesses, right? And there's moments where, I spend a little bit of time with them. For example, in a weekend course, I signed up for a 1 year business program. I signed up for a one-on-one coach. So while I was going through this roller coaster of like emotions and
Mm.
not knowing like, not knowing how to do this thing, there was some guidance here and there. Um, yeah, I remember I did a video at some point and it was about my first journey. And the way I described it, it was just like, throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping things would stick. And
Mm.
that's probably like the best way to describe it.
Mm.
Alhamdulillah, somehow I managed to make 50,000 in sales.
Mm.
But here's the thing, a that is a lot of money, especially for someone that used to work in a supermarket,
Mm.
earning 1,000 a month. However, at the end of my first year, I still had to apply for a job,
Mm.
right? Because financially things were so difficult. And
Mm.
I was like, you know what? We got a baby now, just got married,
Alhamdulillah.
we need to do things a bit differently.
Mm.
And so I actually applied for a job and I got a job with one of my mentors, one of my business coaches. So yeah, that was the first year. And the second year probably was very similar. What helped me in the second year is actually working for this other mentor. And that got me some more, financial security. And that allowed me to just um let's just say like regulate my nervous system a bit better,
Yeah.
right? And actually the other thing is that I haven't talked a lot about is that I got a really good idea of what it looks like to be a professional,
Mm.
right? Because I would meet with him 9 in the morning, right? And I remember like thinking like this guy is crazy. Like, why does he want me to meet him 9 in the morning?
Mm.
I'd go into central London, right? Meet him 9 in the morning. He would come every single day with a suit, every
Mm.
single day, right? And he's working from 9 to 5. So before this, my life was basically sleep random times, like sleep 1 a.m., 2 a.m., wake up random times. Because I was like, oh, I'm working for myself. I have all this freedom, right? You know,
Yeah.
my wife's like, hey, you want to go shopping? Yeah, sure, let's go shopping. And I
Mm,
would work a few hours in the afternoon, a few hours in the evening. It's all these random times. But this is
mm,
the first time I really get to experience what it looks like to have a professional business,
mm,
right? So that really helped me. And again, I can see that, this was Allah guiding me through this and showing me that there's a different way of doing things.
mm. Alhamdulillah. And so we see then that, there was a bit of a roller coaster. And then you got to the second year and you started to see that structure could be applied to coaching, even though you worked for yourself and from home, from working with this mentor. So, at what point did coaching become a stable career for you?
Yeah, I think it's towards that mid mid second year, end of second year.
Mm,
So one of the things that I did, because Alhamdulillah now I had some regular cash flow coming in from this job.
mhm,
And here's the thing, Alhamdulillah, in this job, I was hired initially as a salesperson by this. I was probably the worst salesperson in history. It's about to fire me, and I said, "Hey, look, I can coach. Let me
mm,
coach your clients."
mm,
And he had clients that were paying him 3,000, 15,000,
mm,
right? And I quickly became like one of the favorite coaches
mm,
in that company, right? Most of the clients want to work with me. And so that gave me a lot of coaching experience. And I think this is one thing that's really important, right? A lot of times in the first few years we focus so much on money, but it's the hours. When you build a good base of hours, your certainty grows, your confidence grows, your skills develop. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly how, but I end up in London in person in like a free introduction workshop for a certification.
mm,
And I was like, oh, I need this,
mm,
right? I think probably part of it's like when I was speaking to a lot of people that were doing really well, I noticed that they were talking about that, you need to be really good at what you do. And for me, the first 2 years until that point, I was always thinking like, like people were paying me, people were getting some good result, but there was always this question, can I help this person? Like, am I doing a good job? Right? And so, yeah, I think it's that was really an important moment where I end up into that workshop and then actually end up signing up for that certification. That's when I actually realized like, oh, this is coaching. What I've been doing so far. I thought it was coaching, but it wasn't really coaching. And I think there's this big insight, and that's when I realized like, okay, I can actually get good at this. Like, because it was a professional 6-month coaching diploma, and I got to open up to a whole different world of, you know, what coaching really is and how it can look like and how impactful it can be.
yeah, I love that. So we know obviously coaching is an unregulated industry and it's like the Wild West out there. What difference did getting that professional certification make in terms of your ability to be able to just build this business, but also your ability to feel like a professional and to deliver transformational results for your clients?
Yeah, it made a really big difference, and I think I start seeing this in every module,
Mm,
right? Because we were learning different coaching tools. We were learning different ways to coach. And I think most importantly, we learned actually what's really coaching at the heart, right? Which, because I used to think it's about helping people. And my thought was like, okay, well, people need information. People need, because I read so many personal development books and I thought, hey, that's helped me. So I thought a lot of it's just like give people information, tell them what to do, and, they will improve. But what I start seeing is at the heart of it is okay, coaching is about holding space. Coaching is around, deep listening and asking questions, challenging people, right? So I really so one of the differences is just actually understanding what coaching is at the core, right? It's about helping people tap into the potential they have, that, and that people have the answer. So this was beneficial at so many levels because one of the things is that it took this pressure off me, right? Because I remember like before this, someone said, "Oh, I need coaching on my relationship. And the next thing I would do after this call is like order 6 books on relationship and marriage, right? And I'm like, oh, I need to know all this stuff. So every
Mm.
time I end up ordering all these books on different topics to help people. And then when I learn coaching, I'm like, okay, I don't need to any of that. I don't need to be an expert in
Yeah.
people's lives, right? I can become an expert in human behavior.
Mm.
So that I think took pressure off me, and at the same time, it showed me how a simple conversation, a simple question can be so impactful and can just like unlock, right? And that's how I see it. Like I'm a very visual person. I think I can see sometimes, it's almost like a treasure box, and sometimes there's a small key, right? Sometimes there's multiple layers. You unlock that, the treasure's already within them, within the person. And this is the beautiful thing about coaching, right? It's one question. I remember doing this exercise in our certification, and you had to ask one question and just be quiet for 20 minutes. Right? I thought, what is this gonna do? It just seemed a bit of a waste of time. But that conversation was so impactful for the girl I was doing it with. She's going through tears. She had this big issue she had, and then she solved the issue. And I was like,
Mm.
wow. And so that's another thing, right? I saw how impactful it is. So yeah, I think it just raised my level of certainty about what it is, and also that I think that towards the end, I just felt like, you know what? I can sit in front of almost anyone, whether it's
Mm.
a multimillionaire, right? Or whether it's someone that runs a very successful business, someone that has marriage issues. I don't need to be an expert in those things anymore, but I
Mm.
can sit in front of them and really help them, right? So yeah, big difference.
And what was the impact financially of becoming really good at what you do?
Um, yeah, I think financially, and here's the interesting thing, right? My first 2 years was so focused on money,
Mm.
right? And I think this often happens, but in my journey, it went to focusing a lot on money to then completely shifting the focus towards becoming really good at coaching,
Mm.
right? But here's the interesting thing is I started earning a lot more, right? Because the focus went away from money and the focus just became on becoming good. And as a byproduct of that, right, I was just really making a difference, right? So I was having more conversations. Don't get me wrong. Like I think I put still a lot of effort into learning sales and marketing, and I was
Yeah.
always because I knew that that part's really important, right? But what I started also seeing is that that part was contributing, right? But I start seeing that actually what really makes a difference, what makes sales really easy is how good I am as coaching, right? What makes the marketing really easy is how good I am at coaching. So what starts happening is I'm having, so even before I was certified, I was having a lot of conversations. I think in my first 4 months, I had like 45 conversations, right? I continued having conversations, but now what happened? The quality of these conversations increased, right? More and more people start working with me. Yeah, I think my practice became really full. I increased my prices and it kept going full, right? So Alhamdulillah, I think that's where probably the first year after doing I think I made 100K in sales, but that was a combination of that work with a mentor and my own business. But the third year, the year after the certification, that's why I transitioned out, right? To really focus on my business then.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I think it's alhamdulillah, it's been with 7 years of always hitting six figures, multiple six figures. Um, and yeah, so the money is just always going upwards, but I think it's come from that really strong base of, professional habits and doing really good work as a coach. Because and I used to often get this question from people like, "Hey, I don't see you super active in your marketing, but how is it that you're doing so well?" Right? And my thing would be like, "Well, I think people are just getting a lot out of the conversations with me,
Mm.
um, and people were staying longer. I was getting more and more referrals. So yeah, I think it has this huge impact, right? Because people benefit if your work as a coach is useful, that kind of builds a trust and people want to continue.
Yeah. Or they want to recommend everybody they
Yeah.
go to you because they've had amazing results, right? Alhamdulillah. So having made multiple millions now in your business over the years, has this work brought you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that you intended when you gave up poker?
Yes, Alhamdulillah, it has. And the thing is that the truth is it wasn't like a straightforward journey because, you know, I think one of the beautiful things is with running your own business, you just naturally become more and more reliant on Allah, right? Because you're like, hey, I'm doing my work, and sometimes you're like, where's the money coming from? And I'm just keep going back. Ya Allah, help me, right? Help me pay these bills. You're the provider. So I think that the tawakkul, the relationship there on really relying on Allah, that definitely improved, right? But the thing is, it has been a journey, and what I mean with that is there is this, and I think a lot of us have that, and it is kind of comes from the job mindset, right? But I had this strong belief around like, if I want to earn more money, I need to work harder. I need to work more, right? And so what happened is I went from this kind of like struggling coach to doing really well. But then I struggled saying no to people. So when my practice was full, someone's like, hey, can I work with you? Yeah, I'll squeeze them into the evening. I'll squeeze them into the weekends. So my income was going up, but at the same time, I was rushing Salah, right? I was spending less and less time with my family. Um, Yeah, so I think this continued for a while until, what really, really shifted things for me is 3 years ago, I did training with Productive Muslim with Muhammad Faris, and it was all around, the Barakah culture versus Has culture. And that really got me to slow down and see actually that. And here's the thing, I kind of knew that. I knew that on an intellectual level, but I had to hear it from an Islamic perspective, right? I saw non-Muslims, very successful entrepreneurs work 4 days a week, right? But I didn't get it. And when I really got it was through those trainings that, okay, you know what? Actually spending time with family, putting Allah first, that's what brings more barakah into your business. So the shift, I think it was letting go of that misunderstanding that is my work, my effort, right? Because ultimately we have to put the effort, right? But it's the results come from Allah. The outcomes come from Allah. And so, and I think that moment was really pivotal in, it's almost like a bit of an like awakening around like, okay, hey, I've been doing things one way, but there's a different way to do it. And I can actually put my relationship with Allah really first. So I think before I would almost describe it as like, I'm a Muslim running a business, and I think a lot of Muslims run businesses, but it's not at the forefront, right? It's like, oh, yeah, like it's time for Salah, let me quickly pray. But I think it's like the first kind of 6 years, and then the last 3 years was very different. It's almost like now it's like, no, deen comes first. The prayers get blocked into the calendar first, right? Yeah, and then everything is around that. Like it's actually looking at, hey, what do I need to do different to make sure I'm completely aligned, right? When we build the business, Allah at the center, we ask questions, right? We change it. We change the questions we ask ourselves. So instead of it's like, oh, how can I make this more money? Well, how can I please Allah first, right? How can I make sure that the money I make is aligned? So for me, yeah, it definitely got me close to Allah, but I think in the beginning it was just, there was a lot of gratitude. I think even the first 6 years I got closer, but it's the shift really happened in the last 3 years.
Alhamdulillah. And I think one question that I like to ask, which is sort of going away a little bit from what you said here, is what do you think is the biggest lie that Muslim coaches tell themselves that's keeping them broke, that's keeping them from earning what they could earn?
one of the biggest lie? Such a good question. Because we tell lies to ourselves all the time. You know, like the one I was telling you about, I need to just work harder. Um, well, when it comes to really, I think I've now worked with over 500 coaches. I think maybe a lot more, but I think the coaches that kind of get stuck in that first phase, and the first phase is for me like people that get stuck in that kind of 0 to 3,000, 2,000 a month. I think that a lot of times the thing there is the biggest lie is around like um yeah, I think there's a few things, but I think one of the things is I'm doing my work and it's not working, but it's qadr Allah, right? And obviously I want to explain that because it's not, yes, like whatever's happening is qadr Allah. Like it's supposed to be like it is, right? But at the same time, like my thing around that's like, well, how much responsibility are you really taking? Right? So I've coached a lot of people at that level, and what I start seeing is when I do kind of like an audit, is well, how good are you? But usually I ask three questions, and this is, I think, something that every listener, every person that's watching this can answer. Like, how good are you really at coaching? Not like how good do you think you are. If you ask me this question the first year, I'll probably say like, yeah, I'm a 7 or 8. Because I had this confidence about just whatever I was doing, but I wasn't really good at coaching. But that's obviously kind of highlighted now, right? Now I can look back at it and see that. And then like, how good are you really at sales, right? And how good are you really at marketing? So I think the lie is almost around like, I'm doing the effort, but I'm not getting the result. Okay, you know what? I should be content with it. Being content is a great thing, right? But you still have to face reality, And I think like, obviously lie is a strong word. I think in a way, we make up these beliefs, right? We make up these things. It's like basically saying, you know what, I tried to be a doctor, but it wasn't meant to be. Well, let's look. Let's look. How did you prepare for your studies, right? So, you know, yeah, I think probably that's one of the biggest things, especially for early stages, because the truth is most of us we're not good at these three things when we start.
So struggling with that. So let me ask you then, when it comes to beliefs, because the lies we tell ourselves are essentially the beliefs that we want to hold on to, the beliefs that protect us from something, whether we're protecting our self-worth or protecting our identity in that moment. What did you used to believe about selling, money, visibility that you had to unlearn in order to get to where you are now?
The beliefs that I had to unlearn. Yeah. I'm just gonna write down because it's for me it's so easy to go off topic. Feel free to just stop me there if I go off topic. But yeah, there's a lot. I think one of the main ones around sales was that, I'm not taking something from someone. Because for me, um, so before I started as a coach, I was doing a network marketing business. And so I was already attending a lot of trainings on sales, on putting yourself out there, on mindset. And I used to kind of, at a really deep level, I used to really hate sales. And that's why sales wasn't working for me because every time I would sit in front of someone and they would say no, I would take it really personally. Right. So one thing was right, like, when someone says no, they're saying no to me versus like, I had to change that. It's like, it's not no about me. It's just basically they say no. And I can, be curious around like, what is a no? Maybe it's just not the right time. Maybe they don't trust me at this moment. Or maybe, they're stretched financially. Maybe it's not the right season in their life, right? So no is just, you know, no can mean so many things, right? But a lot of times I think we make it about ourselves, and we make it about our own self-worth, right? I remember one of my coaches saying like Steve Chandler, right? I worked with Steve for quite a few years, and Steve would say, if you had like a center for coaches with low self-worth, you'd have always people queuing up, right? Because as coaches, we make everything about ourselves, right? And so, is shifting that. It's actually seeing that, hey, it's not about me. And the second thing is shifting from this mindset of like taking first to giving, right? I'm not taking somebody's money, right? So I'm giving a professional service, and in exchange for that, someone is paying me. When that really shifted, I became a lot more relaxed around sales. And I became a little more relaxed around just, holding space for people and letting them know, hey, here's the different ways you can work with me. This is my menu, and I'm
Yeah.
okay either way because my risk doesn't come from you.
Mm.
It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for me, right? And that's, I think, a really powerful moment when a coach can sit in front of a client and say, look, I love to work with you,
Mm.
but I'm not attached to it,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, that's in terms of sales. I think in terms
Money.
of money, I think just really seeing that, you know, I think the shift I had to make is just focus on creating value,
Mm.
right? And that kind of leads to visibility as well, right? It's basically like even with marketing, a lot of times we make it about ourselves. So for me, it's like, oh, I don't have a degree, my English is not great, this, and that. And I'm like, you know what? Just get present and add value.
Mm.
Maybe
Mm.
like 90% of the people that listen to this might not benefit from it,
Mm.
might judge me. But then
Mm.
there's people that are gonna really benefit a lot from this. And so, and initially it was just more a theory, and I start obviously one of the things that I've always done is just analyze like what are the successful people doing, and I start
Mm.
modeling them, and I start seeing like, hey, the people that are making good money, they're showing up all the time,
Mm.
right? So for me, it was a lot around that, like unlearning, like, hey, it's not about me. It's not about me in sales. It's not about me in marketing, right? Let's be useful. Let me show up and give value. And alhamdulillah, I think that's such a good thing because as a Muslim, we can just see, what? I gave my all with sincere
Mm.
intentions,
Mm.
right? And inshallah, whatever good comes out of it, alhamdulillah.
It's from Allah. Jazakallah khair. And then I just have one final question for you, Siwash. So obviously you've been helping Muslim coaches and entrepreneurs grow their business for about 9 years now. What made you want to create your own professional yet Islamic aligned coaching certification?
Mm. Yeah. You know, so I started as a life coach, right? And then more and more people start coming to me
Mm.
to help them grow their business, right? And I start seeing like, okay, you know what? I can actually be good at this because I remember in my first year, I did a business program that was like 15,000, and I saw there's lots of good stuff, but there's so many elements missing,
Mm.
right? So anyway, I get into business coaching, start doing really well, but then I start seeing every now and then someone would come to me and say, hey, I'm a coach. Can you help me? Right? And I would go back to those three questions. And I always ask those three questions. Like, how good are you really at coaching?
Mm.
How good are you at sales and marketing? I'm like, look, I can help you become really good at sales and marketing, but this business program is not a coaching certification.
Mm.
I do think like, people will just, and this is not about me, but people by being in my business groups, they've got really better at coaching because they get to think different, right?
Mm.
They get to model kind of like how I operate. And I've had that always with my mentors, with the ones that were really good at coaching. But yeah, so that was kind of like a dilemma, right? Like, and then some people were like, hey, I'm just kind of early in my coaching journey. I'm a baby coach, right? And it's like, okay, what do we do? And people are like, oh, well, can I can I just invest in the business program? And so what starts happening is
Mm.
that people invest in the business program that just didn't know how to coach, and it would take a lot of time. And when I start, and the main thing is for me, right? When I start, I kept asking like, why are some people getting amazing results,
Mm.
right? Like we've had people that, they, go from 25K to 185K in a year. We've had people that go from making 800 a month to, making almost like 192K in a year, right?
Mm.
We've had people that have this incredible growth curves. And then there's the people that were really slow or not getting amazing results. And one of the things that I start seeing, the common pattern between them is like they were not certified. They were
Mm.
not they didn't go through rigorous like professional coaching training,
Mm,
right? And I remember 3, 4 years ago, I thought, you know what? I look at the market. There's only a few people training Muslims,
mm,
right? And there's no one really doing it at the level that we could do and should do,
mm,
right? So that's where the intention already started. But yeah, like you do, you can come up with amazing ideas, but then you need the capacity to create it, right? So for me, it's been like a dream duo for years and years, and I just saw that it's something that people need, right?
mm,
Alhamdulillah, yeah. So we started, we've now like got 2 cohorts, right? And we can see the impact is huge. Like we
mm,
have right now coaches in our certification that have been coaches for 2.5 years, right? And there's a big, big impact on them. And I saw that even with myself, right? Like I had this certification at the end of my second year,
mm,
right? And before and after was huge. So for me, it was really that because I saw that, you know, everybody wants a successful, profitable business.
mm.
We need a requirement for that, especially as a coach, is you need to be really good at coaching,
Yeah.
you know? So I thought, hey, you know what? Okay, there's a problem.
Mm,
Can I create a solution? Can I be part of that? You know, yeah, and I think, like you said, it's an industry that's not regulated. So I thought, you know what, like we need to raise the standard. We need to raise the standard, and we need to raise the standard. And at the same time, looking back, it's always easy to say, well, look, that was a great idea, it worked, but it's still an experiment, and we tested out, right? And alhamdulillah, we tested it. There was a lot of interest, and people are benefiting. So now we can actually see that, you know what, the intuition is good.
mm,
People need it, people value it. Um, yeah, and there's so much that comes with it because it's not just helping coaches get better, that's opening up, a whole new sea of opportunities because now Muslim professionals can say, you know what, I want to work remote or I want to do
mm,
Hijrah,
mm.
right? So yeah, the possibilities are, endless, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And I think what it provides is it allows people to be really good at what they do because we know when you're good at what you do, you're in demand. And I think it's a lot easier to create a business through referrals and renewals than it is to constantly be attracting new clients, right? And so when you get really good, what happens is people want to stay and they want everybody that they know to work with you because it's had such a tremendous impact on their lives.
Yeah,
And
yeah, alhamdulillah, exactly. Like we live in a time where one of the questions always that comes up is like, okay, I'm thinking about becoming a coach, but there's so many coaches out there.
yeah,
There's like it feels like it's like mushrooms popping up, right? Like it's everywhere. But the thing is, the way you stand out. Yes, marketing can help, branding can help, all of that can help. But one of the key ways to stand out is by becoming really good. You
yeah,
know, one of my favorite books is has the title "So Good They Can't Ignore You."
mm,
Right? When you become really good, people can't ignore you. It's like, that restaurant that doesn't do much marketing, but people go there and they're like, wow, there's like a 5-star review. I need to tell others about it.
yeah,
And I think that's at the core of it, alhamdulillah, right? A lot of incredible businesses they just built, around having a really good product or service. And so while marketing is still very important, it makes everything else easier. Everything else kind of like downstream from how good you are at coaching.
yeah. Because ultimately, it's delivery, and are people do people feel like they are getting what they paid for? And is
Yeah.
it valuable enough to stay? Is it valuable enough to let the people that they love in their lives know that this is something valuable? This is something you should benefit from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I know we're coming towards the end of this, but
Mm,
one other thing is like people often ask me like, oh, when I started, I was charging £1,000
mm,
for coaching and slowly start increasing fees. And this is probably also because of my corporate background. Like I have a different relationship with money in terms
mm,
of charging. I always want to challenge myself, right? And at some point, start trying to charge 10,000, got a lot of clients at 10,000, then went to 25, went to 50, right? Then went to 100K. And what I've seen is, right, that there's no magic formula behind like charging more,
Mm.
right? It's not about how good your positioning is. Not about all those things, of course, help. It's
Yes.
not about your branding, your marketing. What's really ultimately the key thing is how good you are, right? Because you can sit, you know, um, you know, if I help someone in their relationship, and an average professional might pay me 5,000, and
Mm.
can be stretch for them if they have like a, let's say, 50K income,
Mm.
right? Someone has a $1 million income, they will pay 10% of their income. That's around 100, let's say 100K,
Yeah.
right? So as a coach, when you're really good, you can solve problems for people that have a lot more money.
Mm.
And again, it comes back to how good you are, how impactful you are, right? So, and this is, I think, the beautiful thing, and then we talk a lot about this, right? That's around being able to create a small practice with high-paying clients,
Yeah.
and I think, I'm so passionate about that because it creates freedom. Because again, the business shouldn't be all consuming,
Yeah.
right? We want a lot of time for ibadah. We want time for family. Alhamdulillah, that brings also more barakah. We
Mm.
want to create something that, something that really is useful. And alhamdulillah, I think as you become better and better, inshallah, it becomes more heavy on the scales because you're actually leaving a meaningful impact in people's lives.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that is it, isn't it? It's something that you can do for your dunya needs, but it can also fulfill your akhirah needs because you are relieving the pain or burden or the struggles and
Yeah,
difficulties
yeah.
that people have in this life. I know we're running out of time, Sivash, but I want to say Jazakallah khair for having this conversation with us and for being so open and honest with us, because I think it's really important to see behind the success. What was life like prior to getting to, because there's a journey, and I think a lot of us, when we are at the beginnings of that journey, we think there's this huge gap that we'll never be able to get over or make to, because we just sort of in our minds believe that this was an instant success, it was an overnight thing, and reality is that it isn't true, and it is about your craft and really refining that and
Yeah,
stepping
yeah.
with that professionalism of your craft.
Yeah, there's no such thing as overnight success.
Yeah.
I think the moment I shifted my mindset towards like, what can I do in 10 years? And actually interesting, 10 years is gonna come this year in October, right? When you shift your mindset from like 1 year to 10 years, everything changes, right? And that's, to be honest, that's honestly like my invitation to every Muslim. If you're gonna on this journey, aim to be one of the best.
Mm.
I think that's
Yeah.
the important one, and that's probably the message I want to leave people with. Like, become one of the best at it, and to do that, you need professional training. You need to, learn. Yeah. All right.
مع
Hope it was
السلامة.
useful. Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام.